Chapter 1. The Moon That Chose Her. The night air was colder than anything Isolde had ever known, though the wind carried a scent of something primal and unfamiliar, like iron and wet earth, like shadows that breathed. She wrapped her cloak tighter around her shoulders and stepped lightly across the forest floor, each crack of a branch beneath her feet echoing in the stillness. Somewhere above, a moon she had never seen hung low and silver, spilling light that made the frost sparkle like a sea of tiny stars. Her heart raced, not from the cold nor the fear, but from the pull she could not explain. It was as if something inside her stirred, something older than herself, older than the village she had always called home. Her fingers tingled, and a warmth crept up her spine despite the chill. The forest hummed with a low vibration, subtle but insistent, and the hair on her arms stood on end. She froze, listening. A sound, soft, almost imperceptible, rose from the darkness, a low growl, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. Her breath hitched. The moon above flared, brighter for a moment, as if acknowledging her presence. Her pulse thumped in her ears. She could feel it now, a thread connecting her to something, or someone, she had never met. And then she saw him. He appeared between the trees like a shadow that had taken form, tall, impossibly broad, with a presence that made the forest itself seem smaller. His eyes glowed faintly silver, catching the moonlight in a way that pierced through her very bones. His gaze locked onto hers, sharp, commanding, filled with something she couldn't name: power, danger, and recognition. Isolde's knees wobbled. She had been alone in the woods countless times, but never like this. Never had she felt like the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. Something deep within her whispered, "He sees you. He knows you. He wants you." But a second voice, far stronger, colder, and entirely human, echoed in her mind, "Do not go closer." The thought didn't come from her. She had not spoken it. And yet she understood it, instinctively, as if it were part of her own heartbeat. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. The man, or beast, stepped closer. The silver light of the moon glinted off a faint scar along his jawline, and the wind carried the scent of wolf, sharp and feral, underlaid with something intoxicatingly human. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The Alpha remained silent, eyes fixed on her. He moved with a grace that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. The growl returned, softer now, a low vibration that seemed to resonate with her very soul. Then, with a motion so fluid it was almost like the air shifted around him, he tilted his head. The silence stretched, unbearable, like the pause before a storm breaks. Finally the voice came, deep, smooth, and laced with authority that made her shiver. "You are mine, whether you understand it or not," Isolde gasped. Something inside her flared, fear, awe, and a strange longing she could not control. The world felt different now. Ordinary life, the village, the people she had known, all of it faded like smoke. The only reality was him, standing there, silver eyes burning into her, as if her soul itself were exposed. But she remembered the warning, the instinct that had pulsed in her chest. I can't," she stammered, backing away, though her legs trembled under her. The Alpha took one step forward, and the air itself seemed to press against her, heavy with power. "You can't resist," he said softly. "Not tonight. Not ever." A shiver ran through her, part terror, part something deeper, unnameable. She could feel the pull now, a bond, a thread connecting them across space and time. The moon flared again, and her vision swirled. She fell to her knees, gripping the frost-covered ground, heart hammering. Her thoughts raced. Fear mingled with a strange, dangerous thrill. He wasn't meant to exist in her world. He was impossible. And yet, the thread tightened. She could feel it tugging at her very bones, pulling her toward him. The forest itself seemed to lean in, holding its breath. The Alpha watched, his expression unreadable, as if he too were caught between desire and duty. The air around them vibrated faintly with power, and in that moment, Isolde understood something she hadn't before. This was not mere chance. Fate had chosen her, and he had recognized her. The forest whispered again, louder this time, leaves rustling like the voices of ancestors long gone. Something ancient stirred in her, awakening, responding to him. She felt it, a surge of strength, of clarity, of a bond she had never asked for but could not escape. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the moment fractured. A branch snapped behind her, sharp and sudden. The Alpha's eyes narrowed, silver flames flickering in the moonlight. He stepped back just far enough to allow her to regain her footing. But the thread remained. It pulsed. It hummed. It refused to let her go. "You will come," he said quietly, almost to himself. "One way or another, you are mine." Isolde swallowed hard, chest heaving. She could barely comprehend the words, the sensation, the inevitability of it all. The forest around them was alive with tension, the night thick with destiny. She had a choice she didn't fully understand. And yet, deep inside, she knew it was already gone. The moon above bathed them in silver light, and in its glow, the first spark of their impossible bond was born. Chapter 2. The Alpha, who refused fate. The forest was silent now, but the tension lingered like smoke after a fire. Isolde's knees still trembled from the encounter with Vael, the Alpha who had marked her without a word, without a choice. Every nerve in her body screamed that she should flee, yet she could not. The thread that connected them pulsed faintly, insistent, unyielding, a whisper of power she didn't understand. Her breath misted in the cold night air as she backed toward a small rise in the forest. She needed to think, to escape, to understand what had just happened. But every instinct in her chest told her something impossible. He was not just a man, and he was not just a beast. He was both, and he had seen her in a way no one ever had. The memory of his eyes haunted her. Silver, piercing, untamed. He had looked at her as if her very existence mattered. And yet, he had rejected her. His words had been soft, almost gentle, yet filled with authority that left no room for argument. "You are mine, whether you understand it or not." She sank to the forest floor, hands gripping the frost-covered earth. Why had he denied her? Why had the Alpha of the Black Hollow Pack, feared, revered, untouchable, looked at her with such intensity only to push her away? Her mind raced with questions that had no answers, and the thread pulsing between them throbbed like a heartbeat she could feel in her bones. Far above, the moon hid behind clouds, leaving her in shadow. The wind shifted, carrying distant sounds, rustling leaves, the faint snap of branches, a howl that was too far away to locate. Her pulse raced. She sensed movement around her, but it was not predators or hunters. It was the forest itself, alive, reacting to the bond that had just been formed. Vael stood at the edge of the clearing, still bathed in silver moonlight. He did not move closer, did not call to her, yet somehow she could feel him there, watching, waiting, the weight of his presence pressed against her mind, heavy and relentless. He was an Alpha, yes, but he was also something else entirely, a storm restrained by willpower, a danger she could not outrun. "Why?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Why me?" The words barely left her lips before the answer came, not in sound but in sensation. Her body tingled where the bond touched her, warmth and fear and longing all at once. The Alpha had rejected her not out of hate, but because he feared what loving her would demand. She could feel the strength in his restraint, the conflict that warred inside him. A low growl escaped his lips, soft, almost inaudible, but it resonated through the forest and into her chest. It was not a warning, it was frustration, anger, desire, everything he refused to say. She understood then, the denial was a shield. He wanted her as much as she wanted him, yet some invisible barrier, ancient, unyielding, law-bound, held him back. Isolde rose slowly, hands brushing frost from her cloak. Fear threatened to overtake her, but a fierce determination surged alongside it. If he would not claim her, she would not simply vanish. She would survive, and if fate had chosen this path, she would walk it with eyes wide open. The bond pulsed again, reminding her that the connection could not be broken. The thread was alive, it was real, and it would guide her, even if he did not want it to. Vael's gaze never wavered. He watched her rise with an intensity that made her skin tingle. For a long moment, time seemed to stretch, the forest holding its breath around them. And then, without a word, he turned and melted into the shadows, leaving her alone, but not free. Isolde sank back onto the cold ground, chest heaving, heart pounding with both fear and exhilaration. She had escaped his immediate presence, yet she knew in her bones that nothing had truly ended. The Alpha who had refused her was now a constant, unseen weight in her life, and the bond between them whispered promises of danger, desire, and a destiny neither could escape. Her fingers brushed her neck unconsciously, where the thread of the bond tingled faintly beneath her skin. Every instinct told her to run, to flee, to hide, but the pull, persistent, patient, unrelenting, told her another truth: fate had chosen her, and there would be no turning back. She closed her eyes, letting the cold wind wash over her, and for the first time understood a cruel, exhilarating reality. She was marked. She was bound. And the Alpha who had denied her, Vael, would never truly be able to walk away. The night stretched endlessly before her, full of uncertainty and danger, and yet, beneath the fear and the frost, a strange spark of hope flickered. Painful, uncertain, but undeniable. Chapter 3. Hunted by the Law of Wolves. Isolde did not realize she was being hunted until the forest began to change. At first it was subtle. The night felt heavier, the air thick with a pressure that made it difficult to breathe. The wind shifted too often, carrying scents that did not belong to the wild alone. Leather, iron, smoke. Her instincts screamed even before her mind caught up. She was no longer alone out here. She moved carefully through the underbrush, every step deliberate, every breath controlled. The bond pulsed faintly in her chest, no longer warm but tense, like a warning drawn tight. Somewhere far away she felt Vael's presence, distant, restrained, wrapped in iron will. He was aware. She knew that with absolute certainty. He knows they're coming. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. A branch snapped behind her. Isolde spun around, heart pounding, but saw nothing except shadows and frost-lit trees. The silence that followed was worse than any noise. Wolves did not announce themselves when they hunted. They waited, they circled, they closed in slowly, letting fear weaken the prey long before the first strike. Her pulse roared in her ears as she forced herself forward. She could not run blindly, not yet. Panic would betray her faster than any scent. She focused instead on grounding herself, the crunch of leaves beneath her boots, the bite of cold against her cheeks, the rhythm of her breath. Then she heard it. A howl split the night, low, sharp, unmistakably close. Isolde froze. The sound carried authority, not rage. It was a call, precise and commanding. A signal. More howls answered from different directions, weaving together into a net of sound that tightened around her. Her chest constricted as understanding crashed down on her. The pack. They had sensed the bond. Ancient law demanded action. A human claimed by an Alpha without sanction was a threat. to hierarchy, to power, to tradition itself. She turned and ran. Branches clawed at her cloak as she pushed through the forest, lungs burning, legs screaming in protest. Fear sharpened her senses, every sound amplified, every shadow alive with menace. She could smell them now, wolves in human form, fast and relentless, moving with deadly coordination. Her foot slipped on ice, and she barely caught herself before falling. Panic surged, hot and suffocating. She was not built for this, not for flight through hostile territory, not for evading predators born to hunt. And yet, something stirred. A heat flared beneath her skin, unfamiliar but powerful. Her senses sharpened abruptly, the darkness thinning, the paths between trees revealing themselves with startling clarity. Her heartbeat steadied, strength flooding her limbs. Isolde gasped, stunned. This isn't human. The realization terrified her more than the wolves. Whatever Vael had awakened in her was changing her, rewriting the rules she had lived by all her life. Another howl echoed, closer now. She veered sharply to the left, instincts guiding her feet. She leapt over fallen logs with ease she had never possessed before, her body responding as if it remembered something her mind did not. The forest no longer felt entirely hostile. It bent subtly around her, offering cover, concealment, paths of escape, and through it all the bond pulsed, not commanding, not pulling, watching. Vael. She felt his restraint like a physical weight, a storm held back by sheer force of will. He was not coming. He could, she sensed that too, but he refused. The laws he lived by chained him more tightly than iron. Anger flared through her fear. You deny me, and yet you let them hunt me. The bond flared in response, sharp with conflict, guilt, and something dangerously close to pain. Suddenly, a figure dropped into her path. Isolde skidded to a halt, barely stopping herself from colliding with the man standing before her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes glowing amber in the darkness. His expression was hard, assessing, devoid of mercy. Human, he said coldly, you shouldn't exist here. She backed away instinctively, but more figures emerged from the shadows behind her. 3, then 4, forming a loose circle. Wolves in human skin, pack enforcers. The Alpha has not claimed you, another said, voice edged with disdain. That makes you illegal. Isolde's hands trembled, but she lifted her chin. Fear still lived in her chest, but it no longer ruled her. Then why do I feel him? She demanded. Why does the bond still breathe if he's rejected me? A flicker of unease passed through the group. They felt it too. The bond was wrong, unfinished, alive in ways it was never meant to be. Ancient laws had no answer for a rejection that did not sever fate completely. Enough, the first wolf snapped. Bind her. They moved. Instinct exploded through Isolde's body. She ducked beneath a reaching hand, spinning away faster than thought should allow. A surge of power roared through her veins, raw and untamed. She shoved one attacker back with strength that sent him crashing into a tree. The wolves froze. Shock flickered across their faces. She's awakened, someone breathed. Fear replaced arrogance. Isolde stood there, chest heaving, eyes blazing with something not entirely human. She stared at her hands, trembling, not from weakness but from the weight of what she had just done. Before anyone could recover, a roar thundered through the forest. Not a howl. A command. The wolves dropped to one knee instantly, heads bowing. Vael stepped from the shadows. His presence swallowed the clearing whole. Silver eyes burned with fury, barely contained, his aura pressing down like a storm about to break. He did not look at the pack first. He looked at Isolde, and in that gaze was everything he had denied her. Fear, desire, regret. I said. Vael's voice cut through the night, cold and lethal. She is not to be touched. The pack bowed deeper, trembling. Isolde met his gaze, heart pounding, power humming beneath her skin. the hunt had failed, but the war had just begun. Chapter 4. Exile, written in blood. The forest did not breathe again until Vael spoke. Silence pressed down on the clearing, heavy and absolute, broken only by the slow settling of frost from disturbed branches. The pack enforcers remained on their knees, heads bowed, bodies rigid with obedience. None of them dared to look up, not at Isolde, not at their Alpha. Vael stood between them and her like a living wall. Isolde felt the bond surge at his proximity, stronger than before, no longer a distant hum but a living presence, coiled tight around her ribs. Her chest ached with it, with him, with everything he refused to say. "You disobeyed direct law," Vael said quietly. The calm in his voice was more terrifying than anger. His silver eyes swept over the kneeling wolves, cold and merciless. "She is unclaimed," one of them said carefully. "The council? I am the Alpha," Vael cut in, "and I gave an order." The word Alpha carried weight, ancient, unquestionable. The forest itself seemed to lean toward him, shadows trembling at the edges. One by one, the wolves lowered their heads further, submission absolute. Isolde swallowed. She had never seen power like this. Not loud, not violent, just inevitable. Vael finally turned to her. The intensity of his gaze stole the breath from her lungs. Up close, she could see the strain in his expression, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands curled slowly into fists and relaxed again, as if restraining something far more dangerous than anger. "You shouldn't have run," he said. Her heart clenched. "You shouldn't have left me to be hunted." The words slipped out before she could stop them. The bond flared, sharp, electric. For a fraction of a second, something broke through his control. Pain, raw and unmistakable. Then it was gone, buried beneath iron restraint. "You don't understand the laws," Vael said, voice low. "If I claim you, I endanger everything. And if you don't," she shot back, voice shaking but strong, "you endanger me." The pack shifted uneasily behind him. Vael closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the decision had already been made. "You will leave Black Ridge territory before dawn," he said. The words hit harder than any blow. Isolde stared at him, disbelief flooding her veins. "Leave? You will be escorted beyond the border," he continued, every syllable precise, controlled. "You will not return. Not unless summoned by the council." Her chest tightened painfully. "You're exiling me." "Yes." The bond screamed. It surged violently, heat and ache crashing through her body. She staggered, clutching her chest as if the pain were physical. Vael stiffened, jaw tightening as if he felt it too, and she knew with a certainty that terrified her that he did. "This is mercy," he said, but the word tasted like ash. "If you remain, they will kill you. Or worse. And this," she whispered, "this is supposed to save me? It keeps you alive? Alive? But alone, hunted, severed from everything familiar, and tethered forever to a man who refused to choose her." The wolves rose slowly at Vael's signal, forming a silent line behind him. None met her eyes now. Whatever arrogance they had held earlier was gone, replaced with something closer to fear, not of her, of what she was becoming. Isolde straightened. If exile was inevitable, she would not beg. She would not break here, in front of him, in front of those who saw her as an error in the laws of their world. "Then say it properly," she said quietly. "Say it like an alpha." Vael's gaze snapped back to hers. The moonlight caught the silver in his eyes, and for a moment he looked less like a ruler and more like a man standing on the edge of something he could never return from. "I, Alpha Vael of the Black Ridge Pack," he said, voice carrying through the forest, "cast you out under ancient law. You are forbidden from these lands. You are no longer under my protection." The final words were a lie, and they both knew it. The bond throbbed, furious and unbroken, mocking the laws spoken aloud. Isolde bowed her head once, not in submission but acknowledgement. Then she turned away before he could see the tears burning her eyes. 2 wolves stepped forward to escort her. They kept their distance now, cautious, respectful. She walked between them through the forest, every step heavier than the last. Behind her she felt Vael watching, not turning away, not letting go. When they reached the border, a stretch of land where the forest thinned and the air felt different, the escort stopped. "This is as far as we go," one said. Isolde stepped forward alone. The moment she crossed the invisible line, pain tore through her chest. She cried out, dropping to her knees as the bond flared violently, reacting to separation. Her vision blurred, breath coming in ragged gasps. Across the border, Vael stiffened sharply. His control faltered, just for a heartbeat. Enough. Enough that the forest shuddered. Enough that the wolves behind him exchanged fearful glances. Enough that Isolde felt it. His pain, his fury, his regret. Their eyes met across the boundary. "I won't die," she said hoarsely, "and I won't disappear." Vael said nothing, but the bond answered for him, steady, unyielding, alive. As Isolde forced herself to stand and walk into exile, she understood a truth more terrifying than rejection. Fate had not been broken, it had merely been delayed, and somewhere behind her an Alpha was losing control of the very laws he had sworn to uphold. Chapter 5. The Land That Wanted Her Dead. The land beyond Black Ridge did not welcome her. The moment Isolde crossed fully into exile, the air changed. It grew heavier, colder, as though the world itself recoiled from her presence. The forest here was older, wilder, trees twisted with age, roots clawing through the earth like grasping fingers. No pack claimed this territory. Nobelium Alpha ruled it. It was a place forgotten by law and feared by wolves. Isolde stumbled forward, every step an effort. Her chest still burned where the bond had reacted to the border, the pain dull now but persistent, like a bruise pressed from the inside. Each breath felt too shallow, too sharp. She wrapped her arms around herself, teeth chattering, though she could not tell whether it was cold or shock that shook her so violently. She was alone. The reality settled slowly, cruelly. No village lights, no familiar paths, no voices but her own breath and the distant, unsettling sounds of the wild. She forced herself onward, knowing stopping would be worse. Wolves, rogue or otherwise, would roam this land freely. Creatures that obeyed no law, answered to no Alpha, and humans who wandered here rarely returned. Her boots slipped on frost-slick stone as she descended into a shallow valley. Shadows stretched unnaturally long between the trees, and the silence pressed close, broken only by the occasional crack of ice or the whisper of unseen movement. She felt watched, not by Vael. His presence remained distant but steady, like a star seen through clouds, but by something else, something hungry. Isolde's pulse quickened. She tried to steady herself, drawing on the strange strength that had surged earlier when the pack hunted her. But now, fear dulled her focus. The power did not answer immediately. It lay dormant beneath her skin, coiled tight, waiting. A sound echoed to her left, low, wet, wrong. She spun around just in time to see eyes gleaming in the darkness. Yellow, feral, unblinking. A shape moved between the trees, large and unnatural, its limbs bending at angles no wolf should possess. Her breath caught. A rogue, but not just any rogue. This one stank of decay and blood, its aura warped and jagged, as if something had gone wrong in its transformation long ago. It circled slowly, lips peeling back to reveal stained teeth. Isolde backed away, heart hammering. "I won't fight you," she whispered, though she knew how foolish it sounded. The creature lunged. Instinct took over. Something exploded inside her. Heat flooded her veins, fierce and blinding. Her vision sharpened violently, the world snapping into terrifying clarity. She could see the rogue's muscles tensing before it moved, could hear its heartbeat, could smell its intent. Isolde raised her hands, and the ground beneath the rogue cracked. A shockwave rippled outward, throwing the creature back with brutal force. It slammed into a tree with a sickening crunch, collapsing into the snow in a tangle of limbs. Isolde staggered, gasping. Her hands trembled, glowing faintly before the light faded. The silence that followed was absolute. She stared at the fallen rogue, disbelief crashing through her. That was me. Fear and awe tangled painfully in her chest. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was changing. Her knees gave out, and she sank to the frozen ground, shaking. Tears burned her eyes, hot against the cold night. Everything hurt, her body, her heart, the bond that refused to let go. "Vael," she whispered without thinking. The response was immediate. The bond tightened, not painfully this time, but firmly, reassuringly. She felt his awareness sharpen, his control strain. He knew. Wherever he was, he felt the surge of her power, the danger she had faced. For the first time since exile, something like warmth settled in her chest. Not comfort, but certainty. She would not die here. She forced herself to stand again, legs weak but steady enough to move. She dragged herself deeper into the valley, away from the rogue's broken body, until she found shelter beneath a massive hollowed tree whose roots formed a natural barrier. There she collapsed, curling inward as exhaustion claimed her, as sleep dragged her under. Visions flickered behind her closed eyes, silver moons splitting the sky, ancient wolves bowing, blood-red symbols burning into stone. And at the center of it all, Vael, watching her, not as an alpha, but as a man standing on the edge of losing everything. Chapter 6. The Alpha begins to break. The council chamber had never felt so small. Vael stood at the center of it, tall and unmoving, yet the air around him churned with barely restrained fury. Stone pillars lined the circular hall, each carved with the sigils of past alphas, men and women who had ruled with discipline, balance, and control. Vael was failing all three. The elders watched him in uneasy silence. They had summoned him at dawn, claiming urgency, but he knew the truth. They felt it. The fracture, the instability that rippled through the bond like a tremor beneath the earth. "You crossed a line," Elder Kalor finally said, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Exile is absolute." Yet the moment she crossed the boundary, the land itself reacted. Vael's jaw tightened. "I felt nothing," he lied. A murmur spread through the chamber. "You felt everything," another elder corrected softly. The bond flared. The ancestral wards trembled. "That has not happened in generations." Vael's hands curled into fists at his sides. The urge to shift pressed violently against his skin, claws itching beneath flesh. He could still feel it, the echo of Isolde's fear, her sudden surge of power, the moment she nearly broke under exhaustion. She had fought, alone, and it had nearly shattered him. "You were warned," Elder Kalor continued. "A rejected mate does not simply disappear. Bonds like yours are not ordinary." Vael lifted his gaze slowly, eyes burning silver. "Then perhaps," he said coldly, "the laws are wrong." The chamber went still. That was treason. A younger council member rose abruptly. "Careful, Alpha. You speak as though emotion rules you." Emotion. If only they knew. Vael turned away from them, pacing the stone floor like a caged predator. His control, once legendary, was unraveling thread by thread. Sleep had abandoned him. Food tasted like ash. His wolf snarled constantly, demanding he go to her. Every instinct screamed the same truth. She is not weak. She is not expendable. She is yours. She should be dead by now, one elder muttered, not realizing Vael could hear him. The room exploded. Stone cracked beneath Vael's feet as his power surged outward. The sigils carved into the pillars flared, reacting to the raw dominance rolling off him. Several council members staggered back, eyes wide with shock. "Say her name again," Vael growled, voice layered with his wolf, "and I will remind you who rules this pack." Silence fell like a blade. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Elder Kalor exhaled slowly. "This is exactly what we feared." Vael straightened, forcing his power back under control, though it fought him every second. "You feared losing control over me," he said, "not over the pack." Kalor's gaze sharpened. "You fear it too." Vael said nothing, because he did. The meeting ended in tension, the elders dismissing him with thinly veiled concern and unspoken threats. As Vael left the chamber, whispers followed him like shadows. Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds, the air charged with coming snow. Vael stepped onto the stone terrace overlooking his territory and froze. The bond surged, sharp, urgent, Isolde, pain, hers raw and sudden, lanced through his chest, stealing his breath. His knees nearly buckled as an image slammed into his mind. Frozen earth cracking, blood on snow, a creature twisted by corruption. "She's fighting," he whispered. His wolf roared in approval and terror. Without thinking, Vael slammed his fist into the stone railing, cracking it clean through. Guards nearby stiffened, unsure whether to approach. "Prepare my horse," Vael snapped, "and summon my shadow guard." One of them hesitated. "Alpha." The council forbade. Vael turned, eyes glowing with lethal certainty. "I did not ask for permission," as the guards scattered. Vael stared toward the distant wilderness, heart pounding with the bond's pull. The pack thought exile would weaken her. They were wrong. And if Isolde survived what awaited her, everything would change. Chapter 7. The Wilderness Answers Her. The wilderness did not welcome the weak. Isolde learned that truth within the first hour. Snow swallowed her tracks almost as quickly as she made them, wind clawing at her cloak like it wanted to tear her apart and scatter her pieces across the frozen land. Every breath burned her lungs. Every step felt heavier than the last. But she did not stop. She refused to stop. Her body ached from exhaustion, muscles trembling beneath thin layers of protection, yet something deeper, older, kept her moving. It wasn't pride, it wasn't hope, it was survival, and something else, something stirring beneath her skin. She stumbled as the ground dipped, suddenly, barely catching herself against a twisted tree trunk. The bark was rough, biting into her palms, grounding her just long enough for her vision to clear. Blood. She hadn't noticed when it started. A thin trail stained the snow behind her, proof of scraped skin, cracked lips, and sheer willpower stretched beyond its limit. "So this is it," she whispered hoarsely, voice stolen by the wind. "This is where you wanted me to die." No answer came, not from the pack, not from the bond, not from the Alpha who had looked into her eyes and turned away. Her chest tightened, not with grief this time, but with something sharper. Anger, controlled, focused. The wilderness watched her in silence. Isolde pushed on until the trees thickened, their branches knitting together overhead like ribs around a beating heart. The light dimmed, the air changed. Even the wind softened, as if the land itself was holding its breath. She felt it then, a pressure, not pain, awareness. Her steps slowed. Every instinct screamed that she was no longer alone. "Show yourself," she said, voice barely more than a breath. A low growl answered, not from behind or ahead, but all around her. It vibrated through the ground, through her bones, through the very air she breathed. Her heart pounded violently as shadows shifted between the trees. Eyes, too many to count, rogues, but not ordinary ones. Their bodies were wrong, too lean, too stretched, veins dark beneath pale fur. Corruption clung to them like rot, their eyes glowing with a sickly hue that made her stomach twist. They circled her slowly. Isolde backed toward a tree, pulse roaring in her ears. She had no weapon, no pack, no alpha, only herself. The first rogue lunged. Instinct took over. Isolde screamed, not in fear, but in defiance. And something answered. The ground beneath her feet cracked. A pulse of power exploded outward, throwing the rogue back as if struck by an invisible force. Snow and debris blasted into the air, the trees groaning as if in protest. Isolde stared at her own hands, breath hitching. What did I just do? The rogues hesitated now, uncertain. Good. She straightened, spine burning but unbroken. The fear was still there, but it no longer ruled her. Heat flooded her veins, sharp and electric, unlike anything she had ever felt. When the next rogue attacked, she was ready. She moved without thinking, power responding to her will, shields forming instinctively, bursts of force slamming into bodies mid-leap. The forest echoed with snarls and cracks of breaking bone. Still they came. One slashed her shoulder, pain flaring white-hot. Another knocked her to the ground, teeth snapping inches from her throat. Isolde screamed again, but this time the sound was different. It was ancient. The earth responded violently. Roots burst from the ground, wrapping around the rogue and crushing it with brutal finality. The remaining creatures fled, their howls fading into the distance. Silence returned. Isolde collapsed to her knees, shaking violently. Her entire body trembled, power still thrumming wildly beneath her skin, untamed and terrifying. She pressed her palm to the ground. The land was warm, alive. "You helped me," she whispered. The forest did not speak, but it did not deny her. Far away, beyond the mountains and laws that had cast her out, a bond flared painfully bright. Vael staggered mid-stride, hand clutching his chest as Isolde's surge of power slammed into him like a tidal wave. She wasn't broken, she was awakening, and whatever she was becoming, the world was not ready. Chapter 8. What the Forest Took in Return. The power did not fade when the danger passed, it lingered. Isolde remained on her knees long after the last howl disappeared, palms pressed against the thawed earth, chest heaving as though she had run for miles. The forest around her was unnaturally still. No wind, no shifting branches, no distant calls of night creatures, as if it were waiting. Her body burned from the inside out. Not pain exactly, pressure. Power coiled beneath her skin like a living thing, restless and demanding, refusing to settle. She tried to stand. Her legs buckled instantly. A sharp gasp tore from her throat as dizziness crashed over her, her vision blurring at the edges. She braced herself against the ground, fingers digging into soil that felt warm, almost pulsing. That was when she realized the truth. The forest had answered her call, and now it was collecting its price. A low hum vibrated through the ground, traveling up her arms, into her chest, and straight into her heart. Images flooded her mind, too fast, too many. Ancient wolves running beneath a crimson moon. A woman crowned in vines and bone, eyes glowing with the same power now tearing through Isolde's veins. A voice, not spoken but felt. "Balance is never free," Isolde screamed as pain finally broke through, sharp and unforgiving. Her back arched, muscles locking as something inside her shifted violently, reshaping itself. Marks bloomed along her skin. Dark lines etched themselves across her forearms and collarbone, glowing faintly before settling into something that looked like inked runes, beautiful and terrifying all at once. "No," she sobbed, clutching her arms. "Please, I didn't mean—" The forest did not care about intention. It cared about equilibrium. The warmth beneath her palms vanished abruptly, replaced by cold that seeped into her bones. The power receded just enough for her to breathe again, but it did not leave. It claimed, when the silence finally broke, it wasn't with violence, it was with a presence. Isolde lifted her head slowly. She was no longer alone. A figure stood between the trees, tall, still, and wrapped in shadows that did not move with the light. Its eyes glowed faintly, neither hostile nor kind. A guardian or a judge. "You called," the presence said, its voice layered, ancient, neither male nor female. And the land answered. Isolde forced herself to her feet, every muscle screaming in protest. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I was just trying to survive." The figure tilted its head. "Survival is not innocence." Her heart hammered painfully. "What did you take from me?" The shadows shifted. "Nothing," it replied. "Not yet." Fear curled cold and heavy in her stomach. "Then what do these mean?" She gestured to the markings on her skin. "A mark of permission," the guardian said. "And of debt?" Isolde swallowed hard. "Debt to whom?" "To the wild," it answered simply, "and to what sleeps beneath it." The figure began to fade, dissolving back into shadow and bark, but its final words followed her like a warning etched into her soul. "Power that awakens alone will demand solitude." When the forest returned to normal, Isolde collapsed against a tree, tears freezing on her lashes before they could fall. She hugged herself tightly, trembling, not from cold but from understanding. She was no longer just rejected, she was changed. Far away, Vael dropped to one knee in the snow, breath tearing from his lungs as pain exploded through the bond. Marks burned into his skin, echoes of hers, faint but undeniable. His wolf howled in anguish. "She's marked," he whispered, terror and awe colliding in his chest. "And I wasn't there." The bond pulsed once, heavy, ominous. The forest had chosen her, and it would not let her go easily. Chapter 9, The Alpha Defies the Law. The bond burned. Vael staggered through the snow, breath tearing from his lungs as the echo of Isolde's pain slammed into him again. Fainter now, but marked by something wrong, something ancient. His skin still tingled where the phantom marks had scorched themselves into him, a reminder that whatever claimed her had brushed against him too. This was no longer exile. This was a threat. He did not return to the council. He did not seek permission. Vael turned sharply toward the stables, boots crunching over frozen stone as guards snapped to attention, startled by the storm in his eyes. "Alpha," one began cautiously, "the elders ordered you to remain within the— out of my way." His voice was quiet, deadly. The guards stepped aside instantly. Inside the stables, Vael saddled his horse with swift, practiced movements, his wolf pacing violently beneath his skin. Every instinct screamed the same command: find her. Before he could mount, a familiar presence filled the doorway. "Elder Kaelor, you defy us openly now?" the elder asked, his tone heavy with warning. "If you cross that boundary, there will be consequences." Vael did not look at him. "There already are." "You risk civil fracture," Kaelor pressed. "A marked exile brings ruin. You know the old laws?" Vael finally turned, eyes blazing silver. "Then the laws will break." Kaelor stiffened. She was rejected. She was protected, Vael snapped, control finally shattering, by something older than your counsels and your fear. Silence stretched between them. Kaelor exhaled slowly. "If you go after her, you choose her over the pack." Vael mounted his horse in one smooth motion. "No," he said. "I choose survival." With a sharp kick, he urged the horse forward, blasting through the stable doors and into the storm beyond. Behind him, the pack erupted into chaos. Some shouted betrayal, others whispered hope, and a few, those who felt the land's unease, prepared themselves to follow. The wilderness shifted as Vael crossed the boundary. The air grew heavier, charged with unseen tension. His wolf surged forward, guiding him unerringly, following a pull only bonded mates could feel. Isolde was alive, but she was not untouched. Hours passed in a blur of snow and shadow. Then, blood, fresh. Vael dismounted instantly, crouching to examine the ground. His chest tightened as he recognized the signs, not of weakness, but of battle. "She fought," he murmured, awe threading through his fear. A sudden crack echoed through the trees. Vael spun, blade already in hand. 3 figures emerged, pack scouts, their faces grim. "You shouldn't be here," one said quietly. "The elders have sent hunters." Vael's grip tightened on his blade. "To retrieve her?" The scouts exchanged glances. "No," the lead scout admitted. "To erase the mark." Rage exploded through Vael, raw and uncontrollable. "They will not touch her," he snarled. "You'd turn your blade on your own pack?" Vael's answer was immediate. "Yes." The scouts stepped aside without another word. Vael mounted again, riding harder now, faster, following the burning trail only he could sense. Miles away, Isolde stirred beside a dying fire, her marked skin aching as a new presence entered the forest. Hunters. Her fingers curled instinctively, power stirring despite the cost. And somewhere between law and damnation, the Alpha was coming. Chapter 10. Hunted. The fire was dying. Isolde watched the embers pulse weakly, their glow barely holding back the cold that crept relentlessly through the forest. Night had fully claimed the sky now, thick clouds smothering the moon and plunging everything into a heavy, oppressive darkness. Her body ached in ways she didn't have words for. Every breath felt weighted. Every movement reminded her of the price she had already paid, and the debt she still owed. The markings on her skin throbbed beneath her torn cloak, not painfully but insistently, as though they were awake, listening. She pulled her knees closer to her chest, forcing herself to stay alert. Sleep was dangerous. The forest had warned her without mercy. Power demanded solitude. But solitude did not mean safety. She could feel it now. She was being hunted. It started as a pressure at the back of her mind, subtle, almost dismissible, a tightening in her chest, the faint sensation of eyes where none should be. The forest itself had gone quiet again, not with peace, but with tension. Predators silenced prey before the kill. Isolde stood slowly, ignoring the way her legs trembled. She stamped out the fire with her boot, plunging herself into near-total darkness. Better to be blind than visible. She moved carefully, every step deliberate, forcing herself to breathe slowly despite her racing heart. The snow muffled her footsteps, but she knew better than to trust it completely. They were close. A twig snapped somewhere to her left. She froze. Her hand instinctively lifted, power responding before thought, gathering beneath her skin like a held breath. The markings along her arms warmed faintly. No, not yet. She forced the energy down, jaw clenched. She didn't know how many were coming, or what the cost would be if she unleashed that power again. Another sound, closer this time, a low whistle, pack signal. Her stomach dropped. Hunters, not rogues, not corrupted beasts, pack-trained trackers, the worst kind. Isolde backed deeper into the trees, pulse roaring in her ears. She ducked behind a fallen log, crouching low, every sense straining. Then she saw them. 3 figures moved through the snow with disciplined precision, cloaks dark, weapons ready. Their eyes glinted faintly in the low light, expressions grim and resolute. She recognized the way they moved. Pack enforcers, sent by the council, sent to end her. Her throat tightened, a bitter laugh threatening to escape. Erase the mark, they would say. For the good of the pack, for the good of their fear. One of the hunters stopped suddenly, lifting his hand. She's close, he murmured. I can feel it. Isolde pressed herself harder against the ground, heart slamming violently against her ribs. The bond flared faintly at the edges of her awareness. Not Vael's presence, but something else. A warning. The forest was restless. The hunter took another step, and the ground beneath him cracked. He barely had time to shout before the earth gave way, roots snapping upward and wrapping around his legs, yanking him down with brutal force. His scream tore through the night. The other two reacted instantly. There, one barked. Isolde ran. She burst from cover, sprinting blindly through the trees, lungs burning, snow tearing at her boots. Behind her, shouts erupted, followed by the thunder of pursuit. An arrow whistled past her ear, embedding itself in a tree with a violent thud. She screamed, not in fear but in fury, and the forest answered again. Branches twisted violently, whipping outward, slamming into one of the hunters and sending him crashing into the snow. He didn't rise. The third hunter kept coming, relentless, trained. He tackled her from behind, driving her into the ground. Pain exploded through her shoulder as the air was knocked from her lungs. She struggled, clawing at the snow, panic clawing its way up her throat. Don't fight it, he said harshly, pinning her down. This will be quick. Something inside her snapped. No, she whispered, and the word carried weight. The markings blazed. Power surged violently outward, throwing the hunter off her like a broken doll. He slammed into a tree with a sickening crack and went still. Isolde staggered to her feet, chest heaving, vision blurring as the backlash hit her all at once. The forest groaned in protest around her, branches sagging, the ground trembling beneath her boots. She clutched her chest, gasping. The price was coming. Her knees buckled, and before she could hit the ground, arms caught her. Strong, warm, not real. Her senses exploded all at once. Pine, frost, iron, him, Vael. She froze, heart stuttering violently. Slowly she lifted her gaze. Silver eyes stared back at her, raw with fear, fury, and something dangerously close to regret. I told you to stay alive, he said hoarsely. Her breath caught, tears burning unexpectedly behind her eyes. You weren't supposed to come, she whispered. Vael tightened his grip on her, jaw clenched as his gaze flicked briefly to the fallen hunters, then back to her glowing markings. I broke the law, he said quietly. I would break it again. The bond flared violently between them, relief, pain, longing, and unresolved anger colliding in a devastating rush. Isolde swayed, strength finally giving out. Vael, she breathed. He pulled her against his chest just as the forest shifted again, this time not in warning, but in recognition. And far away, the pack felt it. The rejected mate was no longer alone. And the Alpha had chosen. Chapter 11. When the bond reawakens, Isolde drifted in and out of consciousness, to the sound of a heartbeat that was not her own. Strong, steady, familiar in a way that hurt. Warmth surrounded her, real warmth, not the borrowed kind she had forced from fire and power. She was being held, cradled against a chest that rose and fell with controlled precision. Each breath brushed her hair, carrying the unmistakable scent of pine, frost, and something darker beneath it. Alpha! Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she forgot everything. The exile, the hunters, the forest's price. All she saw was silver eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Vael. She stiffened instinctively, pain flaring sharply in her chest as memory came rushing back. "Don't move," he said immediately, his voice low and careful, as though even sound might break her. "Your energy is unstable." She swallowed, throat dry. "Let me go." Vael did not. Instead, he shifted his grip slightly, supporting her more securely as he moved through the forest with quiet efficiency. Snow crunched beneath his boots, but his steps were sure, purposeful. "You collapsed," he said. "If I release you now, you'll fall." "I don't care," she whispered, though her body betrayed her by leaning into him despite herself. "I do." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Silence followed, heavy, strained, fragile. Isolde closed her eyes briefly, fighting the sting behind them. "That didn't stop you before." Vael's jaw tightened. They reached a sheltered hollow between ancient trees, their roots rising like walls against the wind. Vael lowered her carefully onto a thick bed of pine needles and fur he had already prepared, movements precise, practiced, too practiced for someone who claimed he didn't care. He knelt in front of her, eyes scanning her face, then her arms. The markings. They had darkened since the fight, the runes etched into her skin faintly pulsing with a life of their own. Vael inhaled sharply. "What did they do to you?" he asked, voice rough. Isolde laughed bitterly. "The pack, or the forest?" His gaze snapped to hers. "The forest marked me," she continued quietly. "Because you weren't there." The words struck harder than any blade. Vael reached out before thinking, fingers hovering inches from her skin, then stopping. Permission. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside him fractured. "I felt it," he admitted, "when it happened. The power, the pain." His voice dropped. "I should have been there." She turned her face away. "You chose not to be." A long pause stretched between them. "No," Vael said finally. "I chose wrong." The bond stirred, restless, aching. Isolde sucked in a sharp breath as warmth spread through her chest, the familiar pull intensifying now that he was close, too close. Her power responded instinctively, flaring weakly before she forced it down with effort. Vael noticed immediately. "Your control is fractured," he said. "You're drawing too much, too fast. You sound like the council," she snapped. "I sound like someone who doesn't want to lose you again." Her heart slammed violently against her ribs. "Again?" she whispered. Vael's composure cracked. "I lost you the moment I rejected you," he said, voice thick with restrained emotion. "I just didn't understand it yet." The forest shifted subtly around them, branches creaking, roots settling, as though listening. Isolde pushed herself upright despite the ache in her body. "Then why are you here now?" she demanded. "To drag me back? To fix what you broke?" Vael shook his head slowly. "I'm here because hunters were sent after you, because the forest marked you, because the bond won't let me breathe without knowing you're alive." She stared at him, searching his face for deception, and finding none. "Leaving the pack," she said softly. "Breaking the law, that has consequences. I know. Civil war," she pressed. "I know. Death." Vael met her gaze without flinching. "I know." The truth settled between them, heavy and irreversible. Isolde's strength finally gave out. She slumped slightly, and Vael caught her without hesitation, easing her back down. "Rest," he murmured, "just for a while." "And when I wake?" she asked quietly. Vael hesitated, then answered honestly, "Everything will be different." Her eyes closed slowly, exhaustion claiming her at last. As sleep pulled her under, the bond flared, no longer fractured, but alive, humming with something dangerous and undeniable. The forest watched in silence. The pack would feel this soon. The Alpha had reclaimed his mate, and the world would not forgive it. Chapter 12. The price of shelter. The cave was older than memory. Vael knew it the moment he stepped inside. The stone walls curved inward like the ribs of some long-dead beast, dark and smooth from centuries of wind and water. Moss clung to the edges, glowing faintly with natural bioluminescence that cast the space in a muted, otherworldly light. This was not a place made by wolves. It was a place claimed by the wild itself. Vael laid Isolde gently on a bed of thick fur near the back of the cave, away from the mouth where cold air still crept in. She barely stirred, lashes fluttering as her breathing evened out, though faint lines of pain still etched her brow. She was burning up, not with fever, with power. Vael crouched beside her, removing his cloak and draping it over her shoulders. The moment the fabric touched her skin, the markings flared brighter, reacting instinctively to his presence. He hissed under his breath. "Easy," he murmured, more to himself than to her. The bond between them pulsed unsteadily, no longer broken but raw, like a wound that had been stitched too quickly. Every breath she took echoed faintly in his chest. Every tremor of her body tugged painfully at his control. He had faced battles, rebellions, executions. Nothing had prepared him for this. Isolde shifted, a soft sound escaping her lips, a sound caught halfway between a sigh and a whimper. Her fingers twitched, clutching weakly at the fur beneath her as if searching for something solid. Vael reached out before he could stop himself. The instant his fingers brushed her wrist, power surged violently between them. The cave shuddered. Stone groaned overhead as glowing lines, ancient, dormant symbols, flickered faintly across the walls. Vael jerked his hand back, heart hammering. The forest had followed them. No, it had claimed them. A low, resonant hum filled the cave, vibrating through bone and blood alike. Vael rose slowly to his feet, instinct screaming, wolf pacing restlessly beneath his skin. "This is neutral ground," he said quietly, though he wasn't sure to whom. "She's under my protection." The hum deepened. Then, a presence, not physical, not visible, but undeniable. The air thickened, heavy with judgment. "Shelter is not mercy." The words formed directly in his mind, ancient and vast, carrying the weight of something that did not need a name. Vael clenched his fists. She nearly died out there. Balance was disturbed. She was hunted, and she awakened. The truth struck harder than accusation. Vael exhaled slowly. "Tell me the price." Silence stretched, then the pressure shifted, focused, deliberate. Power taken must be repaid. Vael's jaw tightened. "From me?" A pause, then, "From both." The markings on Isolde's skin flared suddenly, bright enough to cast sharp shadows along the cave walls. She gasped, arching slightly as pain sliced through her unconsciousness. Vael was at her side instantly. "Isolde," he said urgently, "stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, glowing faintly with the same wild energy etched into her skin. "It hurts," she whispered. "I know," he said softly, gripping her hand this time without hesitation. "I'm here." The moment he made contact, the power surged again, but differently now, slower, deeper, as if the bond itself was being tested. The cave responded, stone warmed. The hum softened, shifting into something almost approving. Isolde's breathing steadied slightly, though sweat beaded along her temples. She turned her head weakly toward Vael, eyes clearing just enough to recognize him. "You followed me," she murmured. "Yes." "You broke the law." "Yes." Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile but close. "That's new." Despite everything, something warm unfurled in Vael's chest. "Don't get used to it," he said quietly. She tightened her grip on his hand. "I was so afraid," she admitted, voice trembling, not of dying, of becoming something I couldn't control. Vael leaned closer, forehead nearly touching hers. You're not alone anymore. The words carried weight. The bond answered. This time, the surge didn't tear through them. It settled, slowly, carefully, like roots anchoring deep into the earth. The presence in the cave receded, its judgment not withdrawn but postponed. The debt stands, the hum faded, the symbols along the walls dimmed. Silence returned. Vael sagged slightly, the tension finally releasing from his body. He remained beside Isolde, unwilling to move even as exhaustion tugged at him. She watched him through half-lidded eyes. You're tired, she said. So are you. She hesitated, then asked softly, what happens when the pack finds us? Vael didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was steady. They will come and I will not send you away again? Something in her expression broke then. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a quiet, devastating way. Tears slipped from the corners of her eyes, tracking silently into her hair. Vael brushed them away with his thumb. Rest, he said. The forest has granted us time, not forgiveness. She nodded faintly, sleep pulling her under once more. As her breathing deepened, Vael remained watchful, seated at the threshold between firelight and shadow. Outside, the forest shifted uneasily. The hunters had failed. The council would not wait, and the price the wild demanded had only begun to reveal itself. Chapter 13. The bond tightens. Morning did not come gently. It crept into the cave in thin silver strands of light, filtering through cracks in the stone and catching on the faint symbols etched into the walls. The cave breathed with it, soft, ancient, aware. Isolde woke slowly, not with panic, with sensation. Warmth at her back, steady pressure at her side. A heartbeat, strong and measured, close enough that she felt it before she heard it. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. Then memory returned. The hunters, the forest, the marks, Vael. Her breath caught. She shifted carefully, and froze when an arm tightened instinctively around her waist. Vael. He was asleep. That alone was shocking. The Alpha lay beside her on the fur bedding, one arm curved protectively around her, his other hand resting open near her shoulder as if he had fallen asleep mid-guard. His brow was no longer furrowed with command or control. In sleep, the sharpness of him softened, revealing exhaustion etched deep into his features. She studied him quietly. This was the man who had rejected her in front of the pack. This was the man who had broken the law to find her. Contradictions lived in the lines of his face. As she shifted again, something tugged low in her chest. Not pain, not fear. The bond. It was different now. No longer a distant ache or a wound pulled too tight. It hummed steadily, like a living thread wound carefully between them. She could feel his breath echo faintly inside her own lungs. His warmth seeped into her skin, calming the restless power beneath it. Her markings pulsed once, softly. Vael stirred. His eyes opened instantly, silver sharp even in waking, until they landed on her. Awareness hit him like a blow. He pulled his arm back at once, sitting up abruptly. You're awake. Yes, she said quietly. Silence followed, not awkward. Careful. How do you feel? He asked. She took inventory slowly. The bone-deep exhaustion was still there, but the agony had dulled to something manageable. The power beneath her skin no longer felt like it was tearing her apart, just waiting. Different, she admitted. Not weaker. Relief flickered across his face before he masked it. That's good, he said. Then, after a pause, the forest stabilized your energy overnight. Temporarily, she pushed herself upright, cloak slipping slightly from her shoulders. And the price? Vael didn't answer immediately. That bad? She asked. It hasn't been claimed yet, he said carefully, but the debt is active, Isolde exhaled slowly. So we're on borrowed time. Yes. She nodded, unsurprised. Story of my life. Vael looked at her then, really looked, and something unreadable passed through his eyes. I never intended for it to be, he said quietly. She met his gaze steady. Intent doesn't undo impact, no accusation, just truth. Vael accepted it with a slow nod. Outside the cave, the forest stirred. Wind threaded through the trees, carrying distant scents, snowmelt, stone, and something else. Wolves. Vael stiffened. He rose smoothly to his feet, every line of his body shifting into readiness. They're closer than I expected. Hunters? Isolde asked. No, he said. Pack scouts. Her stomach tightened. They followed you. They would, he replied. Some out of loyalty, some out of fear. And the council? Vael's jaw clenched. They'll come after? Isolde stood beside him, the height difference familiar and strange all at once. If they find us here, they won't take you, Vael said immediately. Her gaze sharpened. Even if it means fighting them? Yes. Even if it means war? He didn't hesitate. Yes. The bond flared sharply at the certainty in his voice. Isolde swallowed. That's not a small thing. I know. She studied him for a long moment. Why? Vael turned toward her fully now. Because the moment I felt your mark burn into my skin, I understood something. What? That rejecting you didn't protect the pack, he said. It endangered it. Her chest tightened. You rejected me because you thought I would break, yes, and now I know you're the storm they were afraid of. The words landed heavy, but not cruel. Something in Isolde shifted. A small, fragile smile touched her lips despite herself. You have terrible timing, I've noticed. Before either of them could say more, the markings along Isolde's arms flared suddenly, hot, urgent. She gasped, staggering slightly. Vael was at her side instantly. What is it? I don't know, she whispered. But it's not the forest. The bond tightened violently, pulling in a direction neither of them had felt before, north, far beyond pack territory. Something ancient stirred, something aware. Vael's expression darkened. That's not a debt call. Then what is it? He met her gaze grimly. A summons. The forest around the cave shifted uneasily, as if reluctant to let them go. Isolde squared her shoulders, power settling beneath her skin like a coiled blade. Then I guess we stop running. Vael nodded once. Together, outside, the wind howled. Not in warning, but in recognition. The bond had changed, and the world had taken notice. Chapter 14. The summons cannot be ignored. They did not leave the cave immediately. The forest resisted them in small, subtle ways, as if delaying the inevitable. Branches leaned closer than before, paths narrowed where none had been narrow, and the wind shifted constantly, pressing against Isolde's senses with quiet insistence. Whatever had stirred to the north had not gone unnoticed by the wild. Isolde walked beside Vael in silence, her steps steadier than the night before, though every movement carried a faint echo of power beneath her skin. The markings no longer burned, but they were awake, listening, responding. She hated that she could feel it so clearly. This pull, she said at last, breaking the silence. It's not forcing me. It's inviting. Vael glanced at her sharply. That's worse, I know. They moved deeper into the forest, away from the cave's shelter. Vael adjusted his pace instinctively to match hers, staying half a step ahead, protective but not controlling. She noticed. She always noticed. The bond between them thrummed steadily now, not frantic, not fractured, but taut, like a drawn bowstring. She could feel his awareness of her every shift in breathing, every tightening of muscle. It was unsettling and grounding. Tell me the truth, Isolde said quietly. "If I answer this summons, will the forest take more from me?" Vael didn't answer immediately. His expression was carved from restraint, his wolf restless beneath the surface. "Yes," he said finally, "but it won't take blindly." She exhaled. "That's supposed to reassure me?" "No," he said. "It's supposed to prepare you." The pull strengthened as they walked, drawing them toward a region of the forest that felt different, older, heavier. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and stone, and the trees grew twisted, their roots coiling above the ground like veins. Isolde slowed. Her heart began to race, not from fear but recognition. "I've never been here," she whispered, "but it feels like I have." Vael stopped as well. "This land predates the packs. Even the council avoids it." "Of course they do," she muttered. "Anything they can't control, they fear." A low sound rolled through the forest. Not a growl, not a roar, but something deeper. The ground vibrated faintly beneath their feet. The summons answered itself. Ahead, the forest opened into a wide clearing where the trees bent inward, forming a natural ring. At its center stood a stone altar, cracked and worn, etched with symbols that matched the markings now glowing faintly on Isolde's skin. Her breath caught. That's me," she said softly. "Those symbols." Vael's expression darkened. "You're not just marked, you're recognized." The moment Isolde stepped into the clearing, the air shifted sharply. The bond flared, power tightening around her spine, urging her forward. She stumbled slightly, and Vael caught her arm. "If this turns hostile," he said lowly, "we leave. Immediately." She met his gaze. "And if it doesn't, then we listen." The ground cracked. A presence rose, not from the earth, not from the sky, but from everywhere at once. The air grew heavy, pressing against Isolde's chest until she struggled to breathe. "Marked one." The voice was vast, layered, neither cruel nor kind. Isolde swallowed hard. "You summoned me. You answered." The symbols on the altar flared brightly, mirroring the runes on her skin. Pain flared briefly, sharp but controlled, like a test rather than punishment. Vael stepped forward, power rolling off him in warning. "She's not alone." The presence paused. "Alpha." The word carried weight. Recognition. Assessment. "You broke the law." Vael didn't deny it. "I would do so again." Silence stretched, tense and expectant. "The bond has shifted," the presence said finally. Balance trembles. Isolde's hands curled into fists. "Then tell me what you want." The forest sighed, branches swaying though no wind touched them. "What awakens cannot return to sleep." Her chest tightened. "So there's no going back?" "No." Vael felt it then, a sharp pull through the bond, not toward Isolde, but toward something beyond her, something that wanted both of them. "What are you making her into?" he demanded. The presence did not answer directly. "She stands between worlds, pack and wild, law and instinct." Isolde closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. When she opened them, her voice was calm. "And the price?" The clearing darkened. "Choice, the simplest answer. The cruelest." Vael's grip tightened on her arm. "Be careful." Isolde nodded slowly, stepping fully toward the altar. The markings blazed, heat flooding her veins, but this time she did not fight it. "I won't be your weapon," she said clearly, "and I won't be your sacrifice." The forest stilled. Then, approval. "Then you will be our balance." The ground pulsed once, power rolling outward in a controlled wave. Isolde gasped, dropping to one knee as knowledge, not pain, flooded her mind. Paths, consequences, futures branching endlessly. When it passed, she was shaking, but whole. Vael was beside her instantly. "Isolde." She looked up at him, eyes brighter than before, something ancient reflected within them. "I know what I am now, and..." Her lips curved into a small, steady smile. I'm no longer running. Far away beyond the forest, the pack felt it. The summons had been answered, and the balance had chosen its bearer. Chapter 15. When the pack comes knocking, the forest did not release them easily. As Isolde stepped away from the altar, the pull that had guided her north loosened, not vanished, but settled into something quieter, heavier. Like a presence that had opened one eye and decided to keep watching. The markings along her arms dimmed from their blaze, leaving behind a steady warmth that pulsed with her heartbeat. Vael watched her closely. Too closely. "You're changed," he said. "Yes," she answered without hesitation, "but not taken." His jaw tightened with restrained relief. "That matters." They moved quickly after that, leaving the clearing before the forest could decide to test them further. The moment they crossed back into denser trees, the air shifted again, lighter, but tense in a different way. Isolde felt it first, the prickle along her spine, the subtle pressure of many minds brushing against the edge of her awareness. "Pack." Vael stopped abruptly, one hand lifting in a silent signal. His posture shifted instantly, alpha rising, power rolling outward in a controlled wave that made the surrounding branches creak in response. "They're here," he said quietly. "How many?" Isolde asked. "At least 5, he replied. "Maybe more." "They're not hiding their approach." That worried her more than a stealth hunt would have. The first of them emerged from the trees moments later. Wolves in human form, cloaked and armed, their expressions tight with a mixture of tension and awe. Behind them came others, fanning out instinctively, forming a loose semicircle, pack scouts, and enforcers. Isolde felt the weight of their gazes immediately. Not just curiosity, fear, recognition. One of them inhaled sharply. "The mark," he whispered. Vael stepped forward before any of them could move closer, his presence slamming into the clearing like a physical force. "State your purpose." The lead enforcer, a broad-shouldered man with scars along his jaw, bowed his head slightly, though his eyes never left Isolde. "The council demands your return, Alpha." "And her?" Vael asked coldly. A pause. "Too long." "The council wishes to assess the situation," the enforcer said carefully. Isolde almost laughed. "Assess," she repeated softly. "That's a kinder word than contain." Several of them flinched. Vael's voice dropped dangerously. "You will not take her," the enforcer straightened. "With respect, Alpha, the forest's involvement changes everything. A marked mate destabilizes, she stabilizes," Vael cut in. "You felt it. The land did not fracture, it settled." Murmurs rippled through the group. Isolde stepped forward then, ignoring Vael's sharp intake of breath. She met their gazes steadily, letting the power beneath her skin rise just enough to be felt. "I didn't ask for this," she said calmly, "but I won't be erased for your comfort." The wind shifted. The forest listened. Several of the wolves instinctively stepped back. The enforcer swallowed. "If you refuse to return, Alpha, the council will name you Oathbreaker." Vael didn't blink. "Then they will speak it knowing the cost. And if they send more?" Vael glanced at Isolde, not possessive, not commanding. "Asking?" She nodded once. "Then," Vael said, turning back to the pack, "they will learn what balance looks like." Silence fell heavy and charged. At last, the enforcer bowed more deeply this time. "We will report what we have seen." Vael's eyes flashed. "You will report exactly." The pack withdrew slowly, tension lingering even after they vanished into the trees. Isolde exhaled shakily only when they were truly gone. "That went better than expected." "For now," Vael said, "the council won't ignore this." She looked at him. "Neither will the forest." Something unreadable passed between them then. Not fear, not doubt, but understanding. They were no longer reacting. They were standing. and somewhere far beyond the trees, the pack began to fracture, not from rebellion, but from uncertainty, because the rejected mate had returned changed, and the Alpha had chosen her openly. Chapter 16. The Weight of Choosing. Night fell in layers, not suddenly, not gently, but with a deliberate heaviness that pressed down on the forest as Vael and Isolde made camp beneath a canopy of ancient trees. No fire, no unnecessary noise. The forest had already marked them as something worth observing. Drawing more attention would be foolish. Isolde sat against a thick root, knees drawn close, her fingers tracing the faint lines still visible beneath her skin. The markings no longer burned, but they breathed, slow, steady, alive. Vael watched from across the clearing, his back to a tree, arms crossed, jaw tight. Silence stretched, not empty. Loaded. "You didn't hesitate," he finally said. Isolde looked up. "Neither did you. That's what concerns me," Vael replied. She tilted her head. "Because you chose? Because I felt the weight of it the moment I did." He stood and paced once, restless energy coiling around him. "The council will not see balance. They'll see threat." A marked mate tied to the forest itself shifts the hierarchy. Old alphas fear what they can't dominate. Isolde's lips pressed together. "And what do you fear?" The question struck deeper than she intended. Vael stopped moving. "For years," he said slowly, "I feared weakness. Then I feared isolation. Then I feared you, because you made me feel both at once." She rose to her feet, closing the distance carefully. "I never wanted power over you." "I know," he said. "That's what makes it dangerous." The forest whispered softly, leaves brushing together though there was no wind. Isolde's voice lowered. "When you rejected me, you thought you were protecting the pack." "Yes, and now?" Vael met her gaze fully. "Now I know I was protecting a lie." The admission settled between them. Heavy, irreversible, Isolde swallowed. "The bond changed when I touched the altar. I can feel the pack now, not their thoughts but their tension, their doubt." "That should not be possible," Vael said sharply. "Yet it is." Her hand pressed lightly against her chest. "They are already choosing sides." Vael's expression hardened. "Then the council will move faster than expected." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If they demand a trial." Isolde nodded. "I'll stand." His eyes flashed. "No, I won't hide," she said firmly. "Not again." The space between them crackled, not with anger but alignment. Two forces bracing for impact. Vael exhaled slowly. "Then we do this openly, on our terms." Isolde felt something click into place then. Not fate, not destiny, but resolve. The forest seemed to approve. A low, distant howl echoed. Not hostile, not welcoming. A signal. Vael stiffened. "That's not council." "Rogues?" Isolde asked. "Worse," he said. "A breakaway faction. They believe the old laws should burn." The night thickened. Isolde straightened, power stirring beneath her skin once more. "Then they'll come for us." Vael reached out, not to restrain her, but to stand beside her. His hand brushed hers, grounding, steady. "Let them," he said quietly, because this time neither of them was running. Chapter 17. When the pack divides. They came before dawn, not with the chaos of rogues, not with the discipline of the council, but with purpose sharpened by belief. Torches cut through the mist at the edge of the forest, their flames muted as if even fire feared drawing too much attention here. Isolde felt them before she saw them. Her breath hitched, palm pressing instinctively to the ground. The forest answered, not with violence but awareness. Roots tightened beneath the soil, branches creaked, shifting their angles ever so slightly. Vael was already moving. 6, he murmured. "No, 8. Spreading, They're not hiding, Isolde whispered. They want to be seen. They want witnesses, Vael corrected. The pack, the land, even the old spirits. The figures stepped into the clearing at once, men and women bearing the marks of wolves but stripped of insignia, no colors, no allegiance except the one they'd chosen themselves. A tall man stepped forward, silver threaded through his hair, eyes sharp with conviction. Alpha Vael, he called. You stand on sacred ground with a marked female who was never meant to rise. Isolde straightened before Vael could answer. I rose because I was pushed, she said calmly. A ripple moved through them, surprise, then interest. The man smiled thinly. You rose because the world is changing. We are simply helping it burn faster. Vael growled low in his chest. You speak treason. We speak truth, the man countered. The council hoards power. The old bloodlines rot. And you, his gaze cut to Isolde, you are proof that the land no longer chooses them. Isolde felt it then, the pull. Not toward the rebels, but toward the fracture spreading through the pack itself. Fear on one side, hope on the other, confusion everywhere. You want me as a symbol, she said. Yes, the man admitted easily. Stand with us, and the packs will follow. Refuse, and we take what we need by force. Vael stepped forward, power rolling off him in controlled waves. You will not touch her. The man's smile widened. That's where the pack divides, Alpha. He raised his hand. From the shadows, wolves emerged, not attackers, not allies, but watchers, members of Vael's own pack, drawn by instinct, by rumor, by the pull Isolde could now feel humming through her veins. Gasps, whispers, Isolde's chest tightened. This is what he feared. This is not a challenge, the rebel leader continued. It's an invitation. Choose stagnation, or choose evolution. Vael turned slightly toward Isolde, his voice barely audible. If you speak now, whatever you say will reshape everything. Her heartbeat thundered. She looked at the wolves watching her, some hopeful, some terrified, some angry that a human-born woman stood where she did. Then she looked at Vael. I won't be used, she said clearly. Not by you, not by the council, not by fear. The rebel leader's expression darkened. Then you choose blood. Isolde lifted her chin. I choose balance, the forest answered. A deep resonance rolled through the clearing, unseen but undeniable. The ground warmed beneath her feet. The watching wolves stepped back, instinctively bowing their heads, not to her power, but to the authority behind it. Vael felt it too. His voice carried, firm and absolute. This pack stands together. Any who wish to leave may do so, without challenge. Any who threaten her answer to me. Silence followed. Then slowly, 3 wolves stepped away from the rebels. Then 5 more. The divide was no longer theoretical, it was real. The rebel leader's jaw tightened. This isn't over. No, Vael agreed. It's begun. As they retreated into the forest, Isolde's knees nearly gave way, but Vael was there, steadying her without a word. The pack had seen, the land had spoken, and nothing would return to how it was. Chapter 18. The trial no one prepared for. The council summoned them at dusk, not with drums or formal messengers, but with silence, the kind that settled into the bones, unavoidable, heavy with judgment. Every path leading back to the pack's stone hall felt narrower than before, as if the forest itself was watching to see whether they would pass or be swallowed whole. Isolde walked beside Vael, not behind him. That alone stirred whispers. She felt them everywhere, through the air, through the earth, through the subtle pull now stitched into her blood. The pack was restless, divided but not fractured. Not yet. You don't have to speak unless I ask you to, Vael said quietly as the hall came into view. Isolde shook her head. If I stay silent now, I'll be silent forever. He didn't argue. The stone hall loomed ancient, circular, its walls carved with the history of Alpha's long dead. Torches flared as they entered, illuminating the council seated in a half circle. 7 elders, all watching, all weighing. Elder Kael leaned forward first, his eyes sharp. Alpha Vael, you return without permission. I return with truth, Vael replied evenly. Murmurs followed. And with her, another elder said, gaze fixed on Isolde. The marked one. Isolde felt the pressure then, not physical but spiritual. Old power testing her, measuring whether she would bend. She didn't. The land has no voice in this hall, Elder Kael continued. Only law, Isolde spoke before Vael could stop her. Then, your laws are already outdated. A gasp rippled through the chamber. Vael's heart slammed, but he didn't pull her back. You stand accused, Kael said coldly, of destabilizing pack hierarchy, influencing wolves beyond your rank, and invoking ancient forces without council consent. Isolde met his stare. I was summoned. Not by you. The elders stiffened. Vael's voice cut through the tension. The altar responded to her. That alone demands reconsideration, or containment, another elder snapped. That word rang loud. Containment. Isolde's hands curled slowly into fists. You fear what you can't command. We fear chaos, Kael corrected. No, Vael said, stepping forward. You fear irrelevance. The hall erupted. Arguments clashed. Old loyalties surfaced. Fear masqueraded as wisdom. Through it all, Isolde felt something shift, like a storm coiling inward. Then Elder Mera, silent until now, rose. There is only one path forward, she said. A trial. Silence fell. Vael's blood went cold. You know what that means? A trial of balance, Mera continued. Not Alpha against Alpha, but bond against law. Isolde's breath caught. What are the terms? Mera's gaze softened, just slightly. If you endure the bond under judgment and the land does not reject you, you remain. If it does... She didn't finish. Vael stepped in front of Isolde instinctively. I won't allow it. You don't have that authority, Kael said. Not anymore. The words struck harder than any blow. Isolde placed her hand against Vael's back. If I refuse, they'll hunt me. Yes, Mera said gently. And if you accept, you may change everything. Isolde looked around the hall, at fear, at pride, at wolves who didn't yet realize the world had already shifted. Then she looked at Vael. I won't let them turn me into a secret again, she said. She stepped forward. I accept the trial. The torches flickered violently, as if the hall itself disapproved or braced. Chapter 19. Beneath Judgment and Fire. They prepared the circle at dawn, not inside the hall, but beyond it, where stone gave way to earth and the old symbols lay half-buried beneath centuries of denial. The council watched from raised ground, cloaked and silent. The pack gathered at a distance, drawn by instinct and fear in equal measure. Isolde stood at the center, barefoot, unarmed, unhidden. The markings along her skin pulsed softly now, no longer angry, aware. Vael stood at the edge of the circle, barred by law from stepping closer, his presence restrained, to witness, not interfere. That restriction cut deeper than any blade. Once it begins, Elder Mera said, voice carrying across the clearing, no one may intervene. Not Alpha, not Pack, not land. The lie of that last claim settled uneasily. Isolde lifted her chin. What must I do? Mera studied her for a long moment. Stand. The ground warmed beneath Isolde's feet. The first phase came quietly, pressure building inward, memories surfacing unbidden, pain, rejection. The night veil turned away from her in front of the pack, the loneliness that followed, the rage she swallowed because she had nowhere to place it. Her breath shook, but she didn't move. The second phase was worse. Heat surged upward, not burning but testing, as if the land itself was asking why her. Whispers crept through the air, voices of past alphas, old laws clawing for relevance. Vael clenched his fist so hard his nails cut skin. "She's holding," someone murmured. Then the bond reacted, not violently, but protectively. A low resonance filled the clearing, vibrating through bone and blood. The markings on Isolde's skin flared brighter, spreading just enough to be seen by all. Gasps broke the silence. Elder Kyle rose abruptly. "This was never permitted," the earth answered. The ground cracked, not in destruction but revelation. Ancient symbols ignited beneath Isolde's feet, lines of power reconnecting like veins long severed. Isolde cried out, not in pain, but in release. She felt it then. The truth the council had buried. The bond was never meant to dominate. It was meant to balance. Alpha and marked mate, strength and restraint, order and change. Vael felt the surge too, and the bond between them pulled taut, undeniable. "Vael," Isolde gasped, "don't." He dropped to one knee, not by command, but by instinct. The pack followed, one by one. The council stood alone. Elder Mara's voice trembled. "The land accepts her." Kyle's face went pale. "Then the law must change." Isolde's power settled slowly, the light dimming to a steady glow beneath her skin. She swayed, and Vael broke the boundary without hesitation, catching her before she fell. No one stopped him. No one dared. Isolde looked up at him, eyes clear, resolute. "This isn't victory." "No," Vael agreed, "it's responsibility." She turned to face the council. "You will not cage me, and you will not erase what happened today." Silence stretched, thick, reluctant. Finally, Mara inclined her head. "Then lead," the word hung in the air. Not alpha, not mate, leader. Vael tightened his hold on Isolde, not possessive but steady. Equal. The pack watched. The future had chosen. Chapter 20. What the Land Remembers. The forest breathed differently after the trial. Not louder, not brighter, just settled. As if something long fractured had finally been acknowledged instead of ignored. Wolves moved through the trees without tension pulling at their shoulders. Even the air felt less guarded. Change had arrived quietly. Isolde stood at the edge of the ridge, overlooking the packlands, dawn spilling gold across the valley below. The markings on her skin had faded to faint lines now, no longer flaring, no longer demanding attention. They had become part of her, like memory, like truth. Vael joined her without ceremony. For a long moment neither spoke. "The council hasn't issued a decree," Isolde said softly. "They're waiting," Vael replied, "for fear to settle, for certainty to catch up." She smiled faintly. "It won't." "No," he agreed, "it never does." Below them, members of the pack moved freely, some training, some rebuilding paths once closed, some simply standing in small groups, talking, watching, learning how to exist in a world that had shifted beneath their feet. "They're watching us," Isolde said. Vael nodded. "Not to judge, to understand." She turned to him then. "Do you regret it? The rejection, the silence, all of it?" His expression tightened. Not with defensiveness, but honesty. Every day, she studied him carefully, even knowing where it led. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Because pain doesn't become necessary just because growth follows." The answer mattered. Isolde stepped closer. "Then don't lead like them." "I won't," Vael said. "Not again." The bond between them stirred, not flaring, not overwhelming, simply present. A shared awareness, a shared weight. "You could leave," Vael added quietly. "After what you endured, no one would stop you." Isolde looked out over the land once more. I thought freedom meant distance. Now I think it means choice. She met his gaze. And I'm choosing to stay, Vael exhaled, a sound he didn't realize he'd been holding. Then we build something new, slowly, carefully, together, she said. Below them, a young wolf howled, not a challenge, not a call to war, but a note of belonging. Another joined, then another. The sound spread, not wild, not violent, steady. Isolde rested her head briefly against Vael's shoulder. The land remembers, she murmured. Yes, Vael said, and now, so will the pack. They stood there as the sun fully rose, not as alpha and subordinate, not as ruler and symbol, but as two beings who had survived change and chosen what came after. The story didn't end in perfection. It ended in possibility, and for the first time, that was enough.